The chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, Jared Bernstein, joins us now. Jared, thanks for being here. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Jared, I spent a lot of time on the campaign trail talking to voters. Some of them are skeptical that manufacturing jobs are going to come back to places like the industrial Midwest, but the Biden administration seems to have confidence in manufacturing in the U.S. What's your message to those voters who don't feel like those jobs might have any chance of coming back to their town?
We have great confidence in that prospect, and it's a confidence not built on just hope. It's a confidence built on the empirical experience of Bidenomics. Not only investing in public goods, very important, our ports, our bridges, our roads, our airports, our water systems, but pulling in private investment to invest in standing up a domestic semiconductor industry, batteries, electric vehicles, clean energy products, and not just on the coasts, but in rural areas in upstate New York, in Ohio, in Oklahoma. We have active hundreds of billions of dollars of private capital committed to tapping the incentives in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, in the Inflation Reduction Act, and in the CHIPS Act to do precisely that. And that's in the wake of 800,000 manufacturing jobs on this president's watch.
Jared, you mentioned private investment, private capital. You have many contacts on Wall Street. How are they reacting to this Biden speech and this Biden agenda on economics?
Well, first of all, let me tell you how they're reacting to the incentives in the legislation I just mentioned, particularly CHIPS and the IRA. And that is they're voting with their investments. If you look at some of the early returns on credits that some of these companies are trying to get, are applying for, and many are getting. You know, we have 35,000 projects active in 4,500 communities across this country. The proof is in these actions that this is Bidenomics at work. It's not just a theory. Now, going forward, to respond to your question, you know, these are lasting investments. When you build a factory, that's not just economic activity for a month or a quarter, that's years on end. So we think we're reversing the hollowing out of these communities that you're expressed these very concerns about, a clear function of trickle-down, top-down economics that was a pretty blatant failure, as the president said yesterday.
Many administration officials over the past year have worried about the war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, and what that could mean for the global economy. There's always the factor of China and other issues on the world stage. What concerns you? I know you've expressed a lot of confidence this week, so has the president, but what is a challenge that looms on the horizon for this agenda?
Well, if you think about some of the key global commodities that are priced on global markets that are so important to American consumers, but consumers the world over, certainly energy and food come to mind. And here I have two very important things to tell you, one of which is a calculation I was just doing before I came out here. If you look at the price of gas, it shot up to over $5 a gallon about a year ago, right on the heels of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Last seen, the average price now is, I think, $3.55 a gallon. So that's a nice reversal there. Now, if you actually look at how much an hour, at the same time, wages have been going up. So if you look at how much an hour of work gets you at the tank, a year ago, it got you 5.5 gallons. Today, it gets you 8 gallons, okay? So that's a 50% increase in the amount of gas you can buy given your paycheck. So it's a combination of rising wages and falling gas prices. Groceries have come down over the past 3 months by about 0.5% in terms of not the inflation, their actual prices. So, you know, the price of eggs is basically back to where it was a year ago. We've got more work to do in that space, Bob, but we're making progress.
When you talk about more work to do and beyond gasoline and groceries, what are some concrete markers Americans can look to in terms of inflation coming down that's indicative of progress or a lack of progress in the coming year?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to continue to build on this trend where year-over-year inflation is down for 11 months in a row. Of course, it peaked at over 9%, last seen at 4%. Now, that's still too elevated, and we need to keep working to keep moving that trend in the right direction. I told you about some of the movements in energy prices, in the price of groceries, But in Bidenomics, Pillar 3 is promoting more competition to lower costs for consumers. So people should watch prescription drug costs, they should watch the cost of insulin, they should watch the cost of clean energy, and they should notice the work that we've done on junk fees, to get junk fees out of the system and to take down overdraft fees, saving consumers $5.5 billion a year.
When you use the term Bidenomics, and the president's been using it this week, it brings to mind, as someone who's a bit of a political junkie and a love of history, the use of the term Clintonomics back in the 90s, or Obamanomics during that period about a decade ago, Reaganomics. On an ideological level, in shorthand, we don't have too much time, how do you define Bidenomics?
Bidenomics is growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, in stark contrast to Reaganomics trickle down. It's built on three very clear and simple pillars: empowering and educating your workforce, reversing decades of disinvestment in public goods with robust public investments that pull in private investments, and it's promoting more competition to lower costs.
And final thing here, Jared, so many people, when I'm out there again on the campaign trail, are talking about the issue of housing, and they wonder, can they afford a home? Inflation is making them recalculate their entire budget as a family or a household.
Yeah.
What can you offer to them in terms of anything constructive that's going to happen on the White House policy side on housing in the coming months?
In this White House, housing policy is housing supply. Ever since we've gotten here, this is not a cyclical, meaning a time limited kind of a problem we've identified. This is structural, meaning it's decades old. It doesn't just go up and down with the business cycle. We have an insufficient supply of affordable housing, and this president has policies in his budget to reverse that. Now, look, we know that we live in a very partisan environment, so we've got to do more than put things in our budget. We're going to fight for those things, but there's a lot that we've done administratively to increase the supply of housing, including grants, including providing access to lower cost loans for people. I know you said to keep it short, but then you introduced a very complicated and gnarly part of policy. So why don't I agree to come back and we'll have a fulsome conversation about Bidenomics when it comes to increasing housing supply.
Jared, we're going to hold you to that. The chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, Jared Bernstein, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.